I'm your host, Brad Schmidt. Thanks for spending some time with us this afternoon as we kick off another show. It's Thursday today. My watch says Friday, but I am aware that it is not Thursday. So, or it is not Friday. It is only Thursday. So I saw that on my watch earlier. I was like, ooh, weekend. But I was like, wait, no, it's only Thursday. Anyway, a lot to get to on a Thursday afternoon, not a Friday afternoon. It is only Thursday. Don't get too excited just yet. We got a lot to talk about. Of course, the news that you actually just heard during the Fox News there, the desire of Kamala Harris to implement some price controls, trying to keep the cost of food down. Interestingly enough, it's very likely not going to work. The problem with price controls or forced mandatory price controls on stuff is that it usually doesn't actually do anything to make anything better, and usually just makes everything worse. You end up with shortages, you end up with higher demand, black markets, and things like that. So we'll get into that today because I want to point out this is one of the dangers when we start hearing politicians, including Republicans, Democrats, everybody, when you start hearing them talk about we're going to put a price cap on this particular product, whether it's things like insulin, Joe Biden with the insulin price cap that was actually started under Trump under executive order and all of that. Anytime a politician starts talking about we're going to hold inflation down, we're going to hold inflation back by using price caps, by using government authority to influence the markets in some way, just know that it's generally going to be bad for the average consumer. And the only person that's going to benefit from it are the people who can afford the higher priced items selling on the black market due to the shortages created by such price controls. So we'll get into that and talk a little bit about it, because what will end up happening for the poor people or the folks on the lower end of the economic ladder, if you will, what ends up happening is they're going to end up standing in bread lines and waiting for the government to help them with a program or a problem that the government created in the first place. So we'll talk about that because it's utter craziness and complete stupidity to think that government intervening in the markets is going to create a better market. I mean, think about that. Ask yourself that question. When have you heard of a situation when the government stepped in, intervened in one way or another, and made things better? Now, certainly it happens, right? There's been a few times throughout history where government has done some things that have actually made situations better, but it is the extreme rarity and it is the exception rather than the rule. So, of course, that'll be a part of the topic. Another one, this is going to kind of tie into the price caps discussion. It's going to tie into some of the economic discussion, because one of the economic discussions I want to talk a little bit about is the financial pressures that are besetting most average Americans. There was I think this is Washington Examiner article talking about how inflation and how it is affecting American families and things like that, and talking about credit card debt and living paycheck to paycheck. And so this is going to tie into that, and it's also going to tie into the price caps stuff. And it's the fact that so little of media in general, including, again, not just me pointing fingers at everybody else, me pointing fingers at the CNNs and the MSNBCs and all of that. Certainly they're the worst offenders because they've got the biggest platform and they've got the biggest microphone or megaphone, if you will. But even folks like me, people like me on the opinion side, whether it's through talk radio or blogs or YouTube channels or podcasts or whatever, there is so little that is trustworthy anymore about information. And that, of course, obviously creates a huge problem, right? Because if we don't have what is commonly referred to as the fourth estate, the media, holding government accountable, holding the people accountable by exposing the chicanery and shenanigans, we find ourselves in significant trouble very, very quickly. So as it relates to economics, I can tell you about the economics, about what's going on. I can go to Google and I can bring up, market prices on, whatever. And it'll tell me that, Google Finance will tell me that the Dow Jones is way up today, 531 points, over 40,000. The S&P is way up. The NASDAQ is up. All of these things are up, and, Walmart's up, and Tesla's up, and Amazon is up. And I can tell you all about the economics from a stock market position. I can say, see, the economy's doing great. Everybody's in great shape. All these stock prices are doing well. Everybody's having a great time and making money. And I can bring up my 401k and I can say mine's even up by whatever percent and all of that. But it's really mostly anecdotal. It doesn't really tell the whole story. Because I can tell you, oh man, everything's going great. I was able to put a couple $100 in savings this paycheck, and I've been able to do that last couple of paychecks. So, things are turning around and all of that. And the very next phone call will be someone saying, well, that's crazy. My grandma Sally is struggling to pay for groceries. She's eating dog food because she can't afford to buy regular people food. Which is actually a myth because usually dog food is actually more expensive than if you just buy regular people food, but that's a whole other discussion. So you'll have the very next caller, somebody, well, my grandma's, she's on a fixed income and Social Security and she can't barely afford to pay groceries and her electric is going to get shut off and she's going to be evicted and all of that. And then the very next call after that is somebody, well, I don't know what this person's problem is. My parents aren't struggling at all. They're doing just fine. They're on a fixed income. They don't have millions of dollars. They're not rich people that retired with millions of dollars in net worth. They're just regular Joes and Janes living on a regular income, and they're doing just fine. They paid their house off 20 years ago and all of that. And then again, the next text message will be Joey texting in, so I can't even pay my heat bill. They're going to turn off my electricity and all the stuff. But then what nobody tells you is that, Joey eats out for every meal at $50 a day and buys cigarettes and beer and all the other things that he doesn't need instead of paying his electric bill. So there's so little that is trustworthy anymore. So one of the discussions that needs to take place in so many of these, whether it's price caps with groceries, whether it's living paycheck to paycheck or credit card debt, and all of those sorts of discussions, we got to talk a little bit about what is really happening generally. What does the data show us about the economy? Because if you listen to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, the economy's doing great. And they'll point to things like, hey, you know what? The Dow had this big crash last week, but look, we fixed it already. 2 weeks in, and it's already over 40,000 now. So everything's great. Don't worry about it. NASDAQ's back up. It's over 17,500. The S&P's up again, and everything's going great. But you talk to Trump, nobody can buy groceries. We're all going to die. The housing market is falling apart. The retirement plans are going to be gone and all of this stuff. So we got to talk a little bit about what's the real story, what's really going on, and is there kind of a silver lining in all of this? So we'll get into that. Another story, if you've not been paying attention over the last couple of days, the Taliban had a celebration over there in Afghanistan. Their third anniversary since the withdrawal of American troops, the botched withdrawal by the Biden administration in Afghanistan. And so I got one very simple question for you on that. Tell me again why we should be sending more money and weapons to Ukraine. Because it seems like every time we do this kind of stuff, we end up putting weapons in the hands of the bad guys instead of actually doing anything to make anything better. Like I said, we'll talk a little bit about living paycheck to paycheck. What does that mean? What does that look like? What's going on right now with all of that? I also want to talk a little bit about the Biden-Harris switcheroo. Is it possible, and I'll leave you this as we go to a break here, is it possible that this switcheroo was more about protecting the establishment than it was about trying to win an election. We'll get into that as we continue with the Schmidt Show next on News Radio 102.9 KARN.